Morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. I think it's been a while since we've had a maybe non-men's and women's basketball chance to get together. So we talked and recognized this was kind of an important moment. Yesterday's announcement helped serve as a catalyst for it, of course. And yesterday's announcement is really another important tangible statement, but it's not the sole, I guess, call it, rationale by sitting down. Of course, Lance has so many things that he'll be eager and excited to talk about and share and answer questions around with all the evolution, some of the change. Obviously, you know, a unique 2024 ahead of us basing out of Kansas City. And so we felt like it was an opportunity for me to kind of kick things off with some opening remarks and answer any questions, talk big picture, talk college athletics, talk obviously micro here at KU as well. But I would just say this to start this morning, everybody. I think, again, when you drill down into yesterday's announcement and what that says about our commitment to Coach Leipold, obviously our commitment to his broader staff, and, of course, to the football program at large, it's a profound statement. I mean, you don't have to do a lot of work to understand that what we're saying there is indicative of what top 20 football programs are doing. And they're not doing it just for the sake of doing it, just like yesterday's numbers, the other elements of what investment look like. We're not doing that so we can, you know, puff out our chest to say we're spending a lot of money on football. We're doing it because that's precisely what it takes to have a viable and sustainable investment and commitment to a sport and to a program that has everything to say about a broader university's health, that has everything to say about how a country and fans and sport in general view an institution's commitment. And that's, I think, the broader context behind it. It is about, we think, the best head coach for the University of Kansas, been demonstrated in what he's achieved and where he's continuing to drive the program. It is about investing in longevity and continuity in that staff, both the on-field staff as well as the support staff. It's certainly about our commitment to the young men in the program. What's best for Kansas football is going to be what's best for the student athletes in the program. And what we've seen, of course, and everybody's lived that in this room to whatever extent, is the kind of continuity and the kind of culture that's been built there has transformed young men. And that's something I know we're all profoundly proud of. Record-breaking academic achievements in the classroom. Young men that graduate and either are, in some cases, off to the combine to prepare for top 2-3 round type draft picks, or for many of them, a chance to go off and do something after sport, but to have been better prepared to take on life and represent their families and represent KU. So it is absolutely about 500 student athletes as well. And I think that's arguably the headline and the storyline around this transformation of football at the University of Kansas, and something I know our entire staff is incredibly proud of and should be. We also recognize that the investments that have been made and the continuity that we've now developed in so many ways because of alignment on our campus, something Lance I know we'll talk about today, alignment and support from our incredible chancellor, Doug Girod, who you wouldn't ask for or want or wish for anyone to be at the helm other than Chancellor Girod, in particular at this critical moment in time for higher ed and for intercollegiate athletics. That alignment extends across campus, whether it be his leadership, provost, CFO, KU Endowment, Alumni Association, obviously down here to athletics. It's a more integrated and aligned institution than it's ever been. And I don't think you achieve these moments and these comprehensive statements of commitment without precisely that. And that's something that is uncommon. And we can even think about it in our region, whether it be some peers or some competitors out there. It's an uncommon statement about the health of the University of Kansas. And so we talk about that aspect. We talk about what has football and sport and athletics demonstrated to the broader institution. And it's been a long-standing, proud tradition that Kansas men's basketball has been this beacon for the institution. It's driven generation after generation of student to our campus. It's engaged thousands and thousands of alumni and fans in a way nothing else can. and it's helped with the financial viability of our place. And in a lot of ways, in this athletic department, it's helped provide fiscally and otherwise opportunities for countless other student athletes to experience the things they've experienced. And now here we are, having rounded that out with vibrant, healthy, and football that has, I think, in a lot of ways, unrivaled momentum. Record-breaking enrollment across campus. Again, something that's been documented, but would be doing a disservice if I didn't point that out and emphasize that today. A direct correlation to the successes on that football field over the last couple seasons. Not my words, not our words, but the words of leaders like the chancellor and the provost and others who are looking at that data week in and week out. And we're proud of that, and our institution deserves it. Better and greater community partnership. I think that's something that is happening as we speak. Sellouts help create that. I think that's something that's long been missing for Lawrence and for our relationship, whether it be with businesses, for the citizens, and that, of course, extends far beyond Douglas County. And now here we are, and we look up the hill, and we're proud to say it's not talk, it's not vision, it's real. And it's $450 million worth of transformation occurring at 11th in Mississippi. It's not $250 million with maybe some other day, a couple hundred more million to make this thing come to fruition. It's $450 million in construction underway as we speak. So the storyline remains, is it about football? Absolutely, it's about football. Is it about something far greater than that? Absolutely, it's about something far greater than that as well. And it's about this broader institution that has a trajectory and a momentum that it's never had before, number one. And number two, I would venture to say that is, again, in many ways unrivaled with higher education and with athletics in particular as well. So we're excited about that. We're proud of it. We think in so many ways we're just getting started, but continuity is a very much focal point of continuing this journey for KU and for football and for the athletics program. Yesterday's announcement, another really critical point to demonstrate that. He's not here, so I'm going to say it without his presence. I want to give him a lot of credit, Coach Leipold, for, he's not here yet, he's coming, don't worry, for his, in a lot of ways, selfless approach to how we engage in these discussions around what commitment looks like and what long-term viability looks like for Kansas athletics and for Kansas football. Certainly, individual personal outcomes are part of what occurs in those conversations, but in every conversation with Lance around his contract, it's about my staff, both on and off-field staff, and it's about, most importantly, the young men in the program. What else are we doing to support the young men in the program? That can show itself in a lot of different ways. We've had conversations, countless in fact, around academic support and providing the most efficient way for our young men to have great academic support. We've had multiple, as you can imagine, conversations around name, image, and likeness, and how are we as a department demonstrating the best opportunities in NIL for all of our student athletes, but in that conversation, of course, focused on football. So a lot of credit to Lance. You know, it's what a true partnership looks like and how it manifests itself, and I don't have any hesitation. He's deeply committed to our university and to our community. All that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Travis, you talked in November about not wanting to sit idle with your commitment to football. I guess, were you on your own timeline to make, yesterday's announcement happen, or were there any catalysts from the outside that were, maybe accelerating things in any regard?
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. I think in November, we're talking certainly about a commitment to the best coach in college basketball, and really an unprecedented contract in a lot of ways. That's, again, about long-term viability and continuity, and it's certainly a reflection of what that program's done for our place. In that discussion, I referenced, whether it was asked or whether I just volunteered, that absolutely we will not sit idle in that commitment to football and to Lance and his staff. I don't know if it's foreshadowing because probably by that juncture we were already working on the deal that was announced yesterday. And my assumption is that's exactly what was going on. We were already having those conversations quietly and getting out in front of this notion that, again, it might have just been 12 months prior, but that's no reason to sit idle, and that's no reason to risk the kind of continuity that's so critical to KU. As far as November to February 28th yesterday, no real profound rhyme or reason other than just the journey. It takes time, dotting I's, crossing T's. Lance, importantly, had something to say about timing of announcement. Didn't want to take away from achievements on the field for his guys. Didn't want to take away from what's going on with our basketball programs, for example, here in February as we get into March. And so it was really more of us taking a look at the calendar, realizing this was going to be a moment to talk broadly about momentum in Kansas athletics and Kansas football and beyond, but also for Lance to then address other dynamics in football as well. So that's kind of what brought us to today.
Travis, you have buyout numbers included in the amended contract, but they're fundamentally the same ones that were in the November 22 version. Just what were the conversations like surrounding buyout numbers, and how'd you end up arriving at the same final numbers?
Yeah. I mean, there was, if you rewind back 15 months ago, there was a lot of conversations around appropriate, reasonable, balanced buyout numbers in the contract discussion and extension of November 2022. So this was in some ways a continuation of that. It was, setting parameters and setting some baselines that you think will apply as you continue to rework and restructure deals. So some of it was just kind of intact. The thing, and I hear it, and I feel that too, of, well, why wouldn't there be some radical shift in buyout, right? These are business decisions and business agreements, so we can certainly understand that question. The reality, guys, is anytime a institution at the highest levels of intercollegiate athletics, Power 5 athletics, so to speak, has set its sights on a coach, and that same coach has reciprocated interest, I've yet to see an example where buyout has prevented that move. And so for us, in the spirit of partnership and trust and the big picture of investment, those numbers matter, but they're not a driving force. And the reality is the market and the industry says they're really not going to be prohibitive, so to speak, in that move. And for Lance and for us at KU, it is just one of many elements that goes into those contracts.
You mentioned Lance wanting more support for staff off the field. From your perspective, what are those conversations like, and what are the things that he really wants to focus on outside of just his own kind of salary? Yeah,
I mean, really, really thoughtful. For the most part, I'd say there's a balance. There's really thoughtful, kind of focused conversations around him, and then there's probably like 6 texts a day on what else is going on in the industry, which is kind of classic Lance Leipold. Communication, which is good, right? Because there's a constant awareness of what others are doing, which I think we all have to have. But more importantly than that is it's what do we need to do at KU? And that's really where the rubber hits the road on those conversations. What are the additional adjustments or additional investments we need to make in staffing around football? That's not a fixed dynamic, how that looked when he was hired in May of 2021 versus the conversations in December and January of 2023-24 is very different. And so I think really just being focused on what does Kansas need to do to provide the best development, coaching, mentorship, acquisition, so to speak, and recruiting and support for its young men in the sport of football. And that's how you get to the right answer. So it's not arbitrary. It's not, hey, it's not based on we need more money to throw at it. We need to ensure we've got the right commitment that provides for what we're trying to achieve at Kansas, which is, by the way, to win championships. And so what does that look like in continuing to move this program forward? And that's been an evolution, and that's why in a lot of ways contracts can change on an annual basis, because that's what it's taken for KU to make the kind of jumps we've made in just 2.5 years.
Travis, what's the feedback and response been on playing the home games in Kansas City between two stadiums that are dramatically different in intimacy, size, attendance? And are you confident you can create a home environment that's a benefit to KU when it's not at the booth?
Great question. Overwhelmingly positive. I mean, we've had enough socialization of that to know it was going to be positively received, but I don't have any hesitancy to say that I'm not shocked necessarily, but I've been surprised by just how, frankly, almost unanimous the reaction has been in support of the decisions to play at Children's Mercy and at Arrowhead. I think everybody understands the significance of the project. By that juncture, we had, in essence, 75% of the stadium on the ground, right? So some of it's related to doing our best to facilitate such a major construction project in such a condensed timeline. Some of it has to do absolutely with the fan experience, what was going to give us our best chance to provide our fans and our supporters the best experience possible. That was something we were learning and evaluating along the way. And then, of course, like everything, some of it has to do with what's the best experience for the young men in the program. And the totality of those evaluations clearly pointed to playing all 6 games in Kansas City being the right outcome. A lot of credit goes to campus because that's a pretty radical departure from a typical campus perspective. And, of course, I got to give a lot of credit to our Lawrence community at large, and certainly the business community here in Lawrence. They know how committed we are to the city and to truly being an economic driver, and we've been an important part of that, and I think the future is even far brighter, in particular with the Gateway and David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium opening in 2025. So some short-term pain, so to speak, in the city of Lawrence, but they've been a very much understanding partner and have had the big picture at the forefront.
Hey, Travis, if I've missed this, I apologize, but you just mentioned the word championships. We hear that a lot with your guys, your coaches. I think we'll hear it more moving forward. Are there plans in place that if you guys were to get into the college football playoff, you'd be able to play at Arrowhead? Have you gone that far yet?
It's in the contract, isn't it? Explicitly? Absolutely. Explicitly. You know, not like hiding it with other language, like, hey, how do we talk about December games? It's playoff Arrowhead, University of Kansas as a host.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
And then getting back to Lance real quick, are you hopeful that, you just mentioned also that these can be annual kind of discussions on the contracts. Are you hopeful that this one will kind of ride for a little while, or what do those discussions and conversations look like from this point forward? Yeah,
I would say this, Matt. I think part of why we've been successful on big picture institutionally and as an athletic department these last couple of years, and why Lance and the staff have been successful, is because we haven't put any real fixed assumptions in place there. If you do that, you probably create more strain. You probably create, frankly, more risk for lack of continuity. And so I would give some credit to that as just being pliable. Intercollegiate athletics is changing so rapidly that if you sit in a fixed state for too long, you're going to have been left behind. And we refuse to allow that at KU, in particular with all the momentum we have going on. I do also, though, at the same time, kind of a two-folded answer, I think, is this contract is a statement of what top 20 football programs look like. And that's how we view ourselves. That's how we view certainly our trajectory and our opportunities ahead of us. I think that's how the country has begun understanding and viewing this thing in a sustained fashion, not a blip on the radar manner. So I do know that it's representative of what top 20 kind of commitments look like to football staffs.
Travis, can I ask, being here to discuss a new contract for your football coaches, obviously one of the markers that can be shown for having success in the program and having made the right hire. How has making the right hire injected enthusiasm and confidence in the department as a whole, but also for you personally as an administrator and somebody who needs to continue hiring coaches? You know, getting this big one right, we've seen what happens when it goes wrong. Getting this right, how does that affect you personally as an administrator and somebody who's directing a larger program? Yeah, no, great question. I think early on, and then of course over some time, it has helped obviously kind of create and breed confidence
in our decision-making, in our ability to evaluate what the needs are, in this case for KU football. Where have we been? What have we learned from that? What have been the right decisions? What have been the wrong decisions? And then how are we charting the course ahead? I think so. It has absolutely helped develop confidence for a broad array of constituents. We've got some of our incredible donors over here to my right, each of whom have stepped up in remarkable ways because they believe in the people, right, that are driving their institution that they love so much, and they believe in the decision-making, and they trust and have confidence, and I think that's really an important thing. I would wager that as important as the hires are, it's kind of like recruiting. It's important to recruit the right student athletes to get them to campus. It's really important to hire and to get them to your place. In this day and age of college athletics, it's more important to retain. It's more important to retain the best and brightest student athletes, and it's more important to retain the very best coaches and staff. And I think that's probably what collectively we're most proud of. We're having great success when you think about retention of student athletes in all programs, right? Certainly football being one of those at the forefront of that, and I think another indication of having great success of retaining top caliber coaches and staff in this case as well.
Travis, you've talked about continuity, and since I've basically been here, between the contract and the renovations, stuff like that, and you look at what is on table potentially for this football team. What do you feel that the goal is for next year, and how do you continue to sustain success past? I mean, Lance has raised the bar every year. What is the expectation for 2024 and beyond? Yeah, I mean,
I think because of the way that the staff, the program, the entire institution has positioned itself, we all have and should have high expectations for 2024. And none of us are putting pen to paper on precisely what that looks like. That's for, the guys to play out and see. And, of course, that's best for Lance to articulate. That's not, in my case, my role to best define and describe. I really view it more as a sense and a feel around what momentum is. There's tons of different benchmarks. There's data, there's wins and losses, there's financial statements, there's a comprehensive way to evaluate the health of a department. But for me, I had a lot of gut instinct. I had a lot of a feel to that as well. And the feel right now is better than it's ever been. And what the feel tells me, in addition to the tangible measurables, is that while 2024 is an exciting moment ahead of us, at the same time, it's really about the middle to long term as well. How do we make sure this is something that demonstrates a sustainable journey ahead? And I think that's arguably, from my seat, the most important point of emphasis and the most important role that we have as administrators.
Hey, Travis, when you started, you said something about the big picture, and I'm curious, since you took over as the AD, what have you seen of the progress in your entire department from top to bottom in all sports and the health of everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think, John, it's a word that we all use and we all love and embrace, but culture is real, and the culture top to bottom in this department is something I know we're all proud of, and we should be proud of, quite frankly. It's not perfect. It's a work in progress in a lot of ways, but it's something we're continually tending to. I think integrity is at the forefront of that. What does it mean to know as a group, as a team, as a department, what right and wrong is, and how do you literally live that at every moment? How do you get that right for your student-athlete population? So I think something as simple as that, I think the fact that we've been able to establish an incredible trust and rapport with campus, I think has had everything to say about the successes and, of course, where we're going, more importantly. And then I'd point to the engagement with our alumni, with our donors, our fans, our supporters. I mean, I think getting a broad collective around KU to believe, to have optimism, and to frankly have ambition has arguably been our greatest achievement, so to speak. And then that starts to show up through the programs, right? That's an incredible, tangible measure of what football is driving. And arguably with football and men's basketball, they're demonstrating that. Long has in the case of men's basketball, and now we are in the case of football, demonstrating what that convergence of things can achieve. And again, I layer it on, importantly, at a place that's got a really proud tradition, incredible history. We've got a heightened level of ambition at KU that I don't think we've ever had before. we fully believe and expect that we should be leaders in intercollegiate athletics in the Big 12 and beyond, quite frankly. And I think these kinds of statements are really important to get out in front of and to demonstrate and to tell that story. We're not aspiring to be maybe a more typical version of ourselves. And we're having a chance for maybe the first time in a long time to demonstrate the collective outcomes of that type of ambition. And that's precisely the path we expect to stay on, again, under the leadership of Chancellor Girard and the entire university.
Travis, we've had a historically mild winter. Tuesday basketball was 79 when I drove over. It was 21 when I left. But have they been able to make hay, construction-wise, renovation-wise, on the stadium, getting things done because they haven't had to battle the elements as much?
Yeah, no, they have. I mean, we've gotten reports to where that's, I don't know how many days, quote-unquote, they've necessarily gained, but it's been a wonderful surprise for them to have had such a clean path. As anybody who's following it knows, those guys, men and women, are working 6+ days a week over there, and they were working, again, through that awful stretch. We've had one awful stretch this winter, I know. They were working through that. They were out there in just some really harsh conditions. So it's definitely lended a hand. And then I think importantly, the fact that we're going to play 6 games in Kansas City instead of a tear down, set up, step and repeat, so to speak, at an under construction Memorial Stadium, I think has really given that group confidence and a degree of relief that they've got a unencumbered site to work from and continue to do construction from throughout the fall.
2 questions and one here to build off of that. How much time do you think you guys will save by playing in Kansas City? And then I know you got to see the construction site earlier this week. What stood out to you just getting to walk around it a little bit more?
Yeah. The way they've described it, because, by the way, they had a plan. We have a plan. We would have executed, could have executed, to play all 6 games here in Lawrence. It was not as if, no, we can't do that, or it's going to push the timeline back. It was just more of a analysis of, again, fan experience, student athlete experience, community impact, financials certainly, and then impact on the project. The totality said, you know what, it's going to be better to not play here in Lawrence. So they had a plan. I think Michael had probably demonstrated 4 or 5 days offline to set up for a game, and then another 3 or 4 days on the back end to get the site back under construction. That was obviously not an option for 6 games or for 6, what would have been 10 maybe weeks of impact. And then at some juncture, we felt like even for our 2 to 3 games, that was going to be pretty impactful on the timeline and on the construction. So probably a 10-day implication on days of construction by playing one game.
Time for 2 more questions. Go ahead, Jordan.
In your opening statement, you mentioned college athletics as a whole with all that's gone on recently, especially with NIL and athlete status. Do you feel like you have a finger on the pulse of where things are going, or do you feel like there's even less clarity now than there was in previous months?
Well, nobody knows precisely where it's going. That much we know. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think you can make the case that not being able to specifically articulate the future, it can end up being a good thing, because we got to be pliable. In that, we know change is coming. We know it's probably going to be reasonably radical, and we've got to be willing to embrace it and then tweak it as it starts to unfold. I think we're just kind of reached the point where we're comfortable being uncomfortable in that projection, right? That there's certainly some who have adopted this notion that whether it be a revenue share or potentially conceivably an employment agreement with student athletes is out in front of us, and maybe sooner rather than later. And I think the focus is going to be on how do you get that model right? How do you get that very pretty radically evolved model done in a way that can help protect and preserve all programs and as many, and hopefully all, but let's just say as many as student-athlete opportunities as possible, because that is a very real risk in that model taking place. And we know right now there's pretty profound conversations occurring with the 4 major conferences as it relates to the college football playoff. I think that's another pretty significant watershed, maybe potentially kind of discussion and moment that could fall upon the industry. And you take that with the injunction out of the state of Tennessee surrounding NIL, and then you layer on active conversations about revenue sharing and, of course, lawsuits that are having a lot to say about that. And 12, 18, 24, it's going to look and operate, I think, pretty differently. For KU, the best thing we can do most days is to focus on being the best version of ourselves today, and we have incredible confidence that will help position us to compete, continue to compete and aspire to win and represent our institution at the highest levels and wherever the model goes. And that's how we're viewing it and how we're focused today.